In this episode of the Body Ally podcast, I'm going to get into why so many women are struggling with liking their body. I'm going to talk about why, the hidden reasons why that has happened, why that's so prevalent. And welcome to the Body Ally podcast, where we learn how to stop battling with our bodies and with food from a faith-based approach. We learn instead how to be an ally with our bodies, partnering with our bodies and accepting them as the gift God intended. Learning how to pursue health goals, not in an effort to prove value, but as an act of love. I am Carrie Nygaard, your host. So I watched something today that really affected me, and I wanted to talk about it. So I thought I'm just going to do a podcast today about it. And it was a reel. And it was a reel that was shared to me actually by one of my clients. And in this reel, there was someone interviewing people on the street. Okay. And they asked 3 different questions to about a dozen women, a little more than a dozen women, and then about a dozen men. The first question was, do you remember the first time someone made a negative comment about you, about your body? So the first question was, do you remember the first time someone had a negative comment or said a negative comment to you about your body? And then they said about how old were you? And then they also asked, did this comment ever leave you? And out of the about a dozen women that were asked, every single one of them within just seconds was able to answer, yes, I do remember. And I was this old, as young as 4, as old as about, 10 or 11, but all of them were quite young when they were first remember having someone say a negative comment about their body. Whereas with the men, every single one of them kind of like looked at the camera and were like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, no, I don't remember. One person said, oh, I remember someone making a comment about my ears being too big or sticking out. And they asked, did that bother you? No, not really. Only one man said that when he was little, he put on some weight and someone made a comment about his weight and that he had yo-yoed his whole life. One man. Whereas every single woman that was asked. Now, this is not a highly scientific research study that went on here on the street when she was asking these different people these questions. But what it was what I think is a really good reflection of what's going on in our society right now, and also what I have noticed of over the thousands of women that I have worked with. I've worked with over about 1,200 women, we might be close to 1,300 women now in a faith-based community of women online. I work with them to overcome their body and food issues, to be able to reach their health goals, not as a pursuit of worthiness, but as an act of love. That's what I teach women how to do. And what I've noticed with them that come in is that so many of them say the same thing. From the time I was really young, I remember thinking there was something wrong with my body that I needed to hide or that I needed to change, or someone making a comment about different body parts, or even if the comments weren't directed at them, the kinds of conversations and comments they were able to observe and hear growing up. This is really important when it comes to brain development. From about the ages of birth to about 7 years old, the state of your brain waves are such that your brain literally is like a sponge. It's highly impressionable, meaning all the information that your little brain was collecting all through those young formative years, your brain adapted with very little to no scrutiny, meaning your brain was highly susceptible to believe whatever it was told from about birth to about 7 years old. After that, they can start to become, they have the ability to become more skeptical. And it isn't until around age 12 or so that someone's able to think about their thoughts, meaning they realize, oh, I have this thought. Is that a good thought? Or what do I think about that thought? That ability doesn't happen until somewhere around age 12 typically. But let's just stick with this younger group. What were all the interactions you had in this culture from age birth to about age 7? Do you remember any comments that people made about you when you were young, or about your body when you were young? And if so, do you remember, just like the women in the reel that I watched, do you remember how old you were, what was said? Do you remember the way you felt when it was said? And did that stick with you? Did you carry that with you? How did that affect you throughout the course of the years to come. I remember, and this is not to, when we remember these things, it's not an effort to shame or belittle anyone who made these comments. What I want everyone to realize is that the people who made those comments, and ourselves included, are all part of something that's going on in our society that has been for eons. And it's called diet mentality, but even underneath the diet mentality, it's being driven by an idea that once you realize this idea exists, you can't unsee it. Why is it that so disproportionately women's bodies are highly scrutinized and criticized? Not that men's bodies aren't, but by comparison, women's bodies are highly scrutinized and labeled and measured and stigmatized. There's all sorts of beauty standards around women's bodies. Not that there aren't for men, but it's hyper or ultra focused in on in our society. Why is that? Why do you think that is? I propose that it has something to do with the amazing function that female bodies provide. Realize that the female body is literally, our wombs are the vessels to nurture and bring forth more life. Without women's bodies, we would not be able to continue our species. Without women's bodies that nurture and grow life within, there would be no more progenitors. Our species would not continue to exist. Our bodies incubate and grow new bodies of future generations. So you would think, given the extreme value of a female body, because without female bodies, we would not be able to grow the bodies of generations to come. Why would female bodies become so ultra fixated in on and criticized? Why would there be such strict standards in our society of what a female body ought to look like? Why is there so little focus in on the amazing service that female bodies provide for all humanity? Without female bodies, there would be no future bodies. So then why the ultra fixation in on this? I believe that there's a few reasons why. One, I believe that there is actually an adversary. You may call him Satan, you may call him the devil, however you think of him. If you are at war with someone, the best way to defeat them is to get them to battle from within. I believe that the adversary, the best way that it can create the most destruction possible is by attacking women and by attacking female bodies. See, the adversary doesn't have a body. So if you wanted a body and didn't have one, what would you do? You would get the bodies that make future bodies, that grow and nurture future bodies, to become disconnected from that power that's within them. And you would get everyone else to become hyper-fixated in not on the divine ability of female bodies to create future life for future generations. You would get them to become very distracted by parts of their bodies or aspects of their bodies that matter very little when compared to the amazing divinity of life, of procreation of life that's been placed within a woman by God. So I propose that the adversary attacks women's bodies in an effort to attack mankind. The adversary does not have a body, therefore he attacks the very core or center or purpose of what creates future female, or of the female body, which creates future bodies for generations to come. I also think that there's this whole false story and narratives that go on around the female body. There's this idea that women's bodies ought to look a certain way, that their chest should look a certain way, that their height should be a certain way, that their backside should look a certain way, that their hips and their waists, that there are ideal standards for all these different body parts. But this is what's interesting, is that when you look at through generation to generation, those ideals change. So if you can get the society to come up with this idea of what a female body should look like, and if you can convince and tell the narrative to these girls when they are young that their bodies should look a certain way, then right when those young bodies began to transfer or transform into their amazing growth. So right when women, young girls and young women are going through this transformative period in their life, that is often when they begin to feel like there is something wrong with their bodies. That pre-puberty, puberty stage, most women who struggle with their bodies, not all, but most women who struggle with their bodies tend to begin to feel that way around that time. So just when her body is maturing into this divine ability to nurture and grow bodies within her, to grow life, to grow the future generations to come, just when that ability begins to become developed and begin to be matured within her, that is also the very time in which women begin to feel like there's something inherently wrong with their bodies. They start to feel shame about their bodies. There's some statistics that I want to share around this. This comes from the National Organization for Women, and they kind of pulled together on their website different statistics that they pulled from different studies. And there's a few statistics here that I think are really interesting. One of the studies that they studied reported that at the age of 13, 53% of American girls were, quote unquote, unhappy with their bodies. But by the time they were 17, so just 4 years later, by the time they're 17, 78% of those girls report that they are unhappy with their bodies. This is really significant. Why? Because more than 3/4 of women, by the time they're 17, young women report feeling unhappy with their bodies. Not only that, but other studies show that if you are unhappy with your body, physically, if you think there's something wrong with how you physically look, psychologically, it comes with mental health tendencies of poor mental health. So if you're not happy with your body, it then transfers into issues with anxiety and depression and overall feelings of just overall dissatisfaction with life in general when you don't have a positive body image. Here's another piece to it as well. There's this body positivity movement that's been going on out there. You'll notice it where it's especially noticeable in different marketing campaigns where what used to be that they would only present bodies in different advertisements that looked close to the ideal beauty standard of the day. Now they're showing women of all different shapes and sizes, which I think's great. I appreciate that they're better representing what women actually do look like realistically in this world. But here's one problem that I actually see is that it used to be that they would only sexualize or objectify certain types of female bodies. But now through this quote unquote body positivity movement, now they're sexualizing and objectifying all the different sizes of bodies. The problem here isn't which size of the body it is, it's that it's still being focused in on objectification of the female body. That if we can diminish the female body to something based upon the amount of pleasure or the amount of aesthetics, right? Acceptability of this body, then therefore that body is more valuable. Diet mentality is heavily leaning upon the idea that a woman can add to or take away from her worth based upon how she can get her body to change and get as close as possible to the ideal beauty standard of the day. And not only that, but the way we do that is through the food we do or don't eat. And that's going to be the next podcast that I'm going to talk about. In the next episode, I'll be talking about the implications of when we look at food as the modality to add or take away from our worth, what different symptoms and issues we then deal with. But I want you to begin to realize the purpose of this podcast is so you can reflect and notice, how has this affected me? What I just thought was normal, what I just thought was fact, is actually an ideology that's being placed upon women that actually distracts us from the divine worth that is within us. Now, I'm absolutely supportive of women wanting to have different health goals for reasons that they like, that will allow them to better support their bodies, that will allow them to better show up in their lives for their loved ones the way that they desire to show up. But we do not pursue a health goal, a health goal as a pursuit of worthiness ever. When we do that, we view our bodies as an object. Your bodies are a gift from God. What does it look like to accept your body the way that God intended? What does it look like when you're accepting your body the way intended and you still have a health goal? Well, it means you pursue those health goals from a foundation of love, acceptance, and gratitude, not from a place of shame and self-loathing and guilt. This is really important to distinguish the difference. So I ask you, are you pursuing a health goal out of love and support for your God-given gift, your body? Or are you pursuing weight loss in an effort to add value to yourself? You did not create yourself, therefore you cannot add value to yourself. You don't have that ability. Now you can treat yourself in a way that better reflects the value that's already been placed within you. Just like you can place yourself within the rays of the sun, or you can step into the shade. The sun is still there shining, whether it's a cloudy day or not, or whether you're standing in the sunshine or in the shade. The difference is where have I placed myself that I can feel of it or not feel of that value. God's love is always there. The worth that he's placed within you is always there, whether you acknowledge it or not, whether you can feel it or not. The question I have for you is, do you entertain thoughts and ideas and beliefs that support what God has taught you about your body? And if not, I invite you to better clearly see of the lies that you've bought into just unknowingly. Why? Because this has been taught to you before your brain was even at the point where you could even be critical of what was being taught to you. How many of you have memories of your mothers or your older sisters or your aunts or other women around you valuing their worth based upon the size of their waist or the size of their skirt or pants or what may have you? It's really important that for you, in order to be able to move forward to the place you want to be, that you reflect on all that's gone on before. And if there's any diet mentality in your past, I want you to see it as just a reflection of what's been interwoven within our society. It doesn't mean anyone else is to blame. It doesn't mean that you're to blame. It simply means that this has been interwoven within our society, and once you can see it, then you can step yourself away from it and reframe your direction somewhere else. One of the best ways that you can do this is to be mindful of the content coming into your brain. Stop feeding your brain content that leaves you feeling like your body's not enough. Realize this, whether you've reached your health goals or not, or whether you've failed hundreds of times in the past to reach your health goals, none of that is changing this one thing. Your body, your gift that God has given you, is fulfilling the measure of her creation in every moment. No matter what she weighs, no matter what health condition she's in or shape she's in at any moment in time, your body is fulfilling the measure of her creation in every moment. And what's the measure of her creation? To be your vessel as you journey throughout time here on this earth. At some point, we all will die. Our bodies will remain here on earth, and then we'll return to our Maker. Our time here on this earth is not possible without our bodies. Our bodies are a gift from God so that we can sojourn throughout time here on this earth, experiencing, expanding, growing, and choosing God again. Continuing to choose God, allowing our bodies to be the means through which we worship Him. Okay, I invite you to join with me in the Body Ally Movement statements. I'm going to read them out loud to you. I've read them on other episodes, and I'm going to read them here again. I am not my body, but she is my vessel. I commit to no longer battle with her. I accept my body as the gift God intended. I am done measuring my worth by numbers, sizes, or worldly standards. I honor and align myself with my body's wisdom. I pursue health as an act of love, not as proof of value. I choose love over punishment, grace over grind. I reclaim the partnership with my divine body. I am her ally. I teach women how to reach their health goals, usually weight loss or weight maintenance, from this place of love, gratitude, joy, and acceptance. Not by dieting, not by weighing and measuring, not by hyperfixating in on food, but by being in flow in partnership with our God-given gift. So in conclusion, I invite you to look in the description below, go to one of my links and join with me in some of my free content, share and like this podcast and share it with your friends. Leave a review. It helps the Body Ally movement mission to grow. So go ahead and share that out. Let's start from here. Check the show notes for links to my websites and other content I offer. Please share this podcast with others and leave a review. It helps the mission of this podcast to grow. Women were not sent here to think about food and losing fat all the time, but to thrive and create and live out God's plan for them. Thank you so much. I encourage you to get rid of any media content that's coming into your brain that's causing you to view your body as anything less than it is, and instead feel your mind. Allow all of your social media, all of your books, all of your music that you allow yourself to listen to support the belief, the truth that your body is actually a gift, and not to support old ideas of diet mentality that are not serving you.